Nephews, welcome home. Everybody says they have standards until those standards actually cost them something. All right, it's easy to say that what you won't tolerate while you're sitting at home alone scrolling in front of a screen. But then she shows up. She's beautiful. She's your type. The chemistry, it's ridiculous. She's giving you attention. And suddenly it becomes, well, nobody's perfect. Look at you. Your hormones hired an attorney, and now your standards are on trial. And that's what we're talking about tonight. Because a preference, nephews, it's something you'd like. A standard, it's something you're willing to lose, something to protect. Now, and that's where men get exposed. Because your standards, nephews, they're not proven by the women that you reject. They're proven by what you're willing to walk away from when you desperately want to stay. Now, tonight, we're going deeper than some dating app checklists. We're talking about what happens when your desire tests your standards. What happens when loneliness starts to negotiate them, when scarcity starts to whisper to you, what if nobody better comes along? And eventually, we're going to talk about the price of that, because every real standard, eventually, nephews, it's going to send you an invoice. Sometimes the price is adult fun. Sometimes it's attention, it's companionship. Sometimes it's somebody you've already invested years into. And when that invoice arrives, and believe me, it will, we find out what you actually believe. All right, but look, understand something, okay? This isn't, nephews, this isn't about controlling women. This is never about controlling women. She gets to make her choices, and you get to make yours. You don't punish her. You don't lecture her. You don't try to remodel another grown adult like she's some fixer-upper that you found on Zillow. You decide, that's not for me. And you walk away with your dignity intact. Look, nephews, your standards don't exist to control who this woman becomes. They exist to protect who you are becoming. I'm just going to let you know our phone lines are open tonight. If you got a question about your own standards, your boundaries, a situation you're dealing with, or maybe you know damn well you've been negotiating against your own standards, call in live and let's talk about it, nephews. This is Swipe Smarter, and it starts now. I'm your certified Unc for the evening. My name is William, but go ahead and call me Unc. Johnny, go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody.
So I'm Johnny Dumbbell. I am your no bullshit personal trainer and life coach out here in beautiful Pittsburgh. So one of the reasons why I'm here to give you guys advice is because I have screwed up in every possible way a man my age could when it comes to relationships and knowing your self-worth, assessing your own value and going from there with what you deserve versus what you'll settle for. Now, I'm not here to tell you that from a perspective of a guy who's always made the right choices. No, I'm here to tell you this from the perspective of a guy who has screwed things up so many times that I can tell you where the patterns are going to lead you if you continue to go down that path. So we like to describe ourselves as the uncles that the entire family has stories about. And while we might not be too proud of those stories, we are proud of the men that we became based on the outcome of those stories. To put it briefly, we screwed up so you don't have to. So make sure you listen up. Now, having standards is not the problem. A lot of people, and especially the ones who are trying to manipulate you, are going to try to make you believe that that's the problem. Oh, your standards are too high. Settle for what you can get. No, the problem is not having standards. It is having standards and then enforcing them. Otherwise, they're just suggestions to somebody who may or may not care what you want. Uncle Bill, We could talk about that, couldn't we?
We can, Johnny. Nephews, look, here's the sentence that we're going to keep coming back to all night tonight. Your standards, they're not proven by what you reject. All right, they're proven by what you're willing to lose. Anybody can write a list. Anybody can tell you what they don't tolerate. All right, that's theory. And I want you to know what happens when maintaining your standards. Well, it costs you something that you actually want, because that's when we're going to find out whether you have a standard or whether you just had an opinion that hadn't been tested yet. Tonight, it isn't about creating a list of requirements for women. Okay. We're putting the man under examination tonight. So, look, we need to clean up the language first, because men, they throw all four of these words into the same bucket. And I'm talking about preferences, expectations, boundaries, and standards, Uncle Johnny.
Yep.
A preference, it says, I'd like this. Okay, nephews, your preference is, I'd prefer a woman who's athletic. It's, I'd prefer somebody without children. Or maybe I'd prefer somebody who has common interests, shares hobbies with me. Fine. Okay. Preferences, I get, they help you choose, but preferences can change without violating who you are.
Yeah. Well, and I think a lot of the fear in enforcing those is the scarcity and prolonged singlehood that people will tell them that might happen. Now, having high standards, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does shrink the pool, like Uncle Bill said. Roughly, what they say is 63% of men under 30 report being single, as opposed to 34% of women in the same age group, which means that we have a little bit more of a scarcity period, which does create that scarcity mindset. So sometimes these young men, Uncle Bill, they find that, a good woman is hard to find. A woman sometimes at all for some of these guys is hard to find. And so they tend to compromise their standards because of this scarcity that they a lot of the time create themselves.
Now, Johnny, next, I want to talk a little bit about, well, okay, we covered preferences. Let's talk about expectations, nephew. Okay, because your expectations tell you this is what I believe should happen. All right. Now, if we're dating somebody seriously, I expect communication. I expect honesty. I expect reciprocity. All right. But look, here's the problem with expectations. The other person never signed a contract you wrote inside your head. And that's why expectations have to eventually become conversations. I don't punish somebody for violating an agreement you never actually made. So now this is Johnny, this is going to bring us to boundaries. Now, and nephews, the phone lines are open. Please call up with your questions. We'd love to chat with you. Now, Johnny, a boundary. It says this is what I'll do when something happens. All right, now that's important. Okay, a boundary isn't you can't do that. Well, I need you to understand it. She's an adult. Okay, women, she absolutely can do whatever she wants. But a boundary, what it is if that's how you choose to live your life, that's fine. I'm just not going to participate. See the difference?
Yep.
One attempts to govern her, the other attempts to govern you. Uncle Johnny, can you give them some tips on how to have better self-governance?
Well, number one, make sure that you're aware of what you are willing to accept and not accept. Because a lot of guys, they aspire to get into a relationship. They strive to get her commitment. And then when he does that, she's going to continue doing things she was doing before, only now it bothers you because she's your girl. The thing that a lot of these young men, Uncle Bill, are not understanding is that if you go into a relationship and you were the one asking for the commitment and you were the one aspiring to be her boyfriend and you want to be the one she chooses, if you had to audition to be chosen, you don't get to set any kind of boundaries at that point because you didn't even do the choosing. You did the auditioning. She did the choosing, which means that it is her boundaries that are going to dictate most, if not all, of your relationship. And if you're okay staying within those parameters, that's one thing. But the fact of the matter is that still means that you're not leading things. And that still means that there is going to be that chunk of her biological attraction to you that you may never see if you ever saw it. Now, the difference being now, if you are the one creating your own program beforehand, before you even meet this girl, you've got a vision as to where your life's going to go, the kinds of things that you are willing to deal with, the kinds of things you are willing to sacrifice, the kinds of things you are willing to not put up with, the kinds of women that you would put in the fun zone, and the kinds of women that you would put in the potential commitment zone. But make sure that you are doing choosing based on your own preferences, because if you do not, then all you're doing is trying to shape your preferences around what she actually does. So if you're not compromising, you're giving up those standards altogether. So yeah, I would say make sure you know who you are and who you are willing to accept and what you're willing to accept. And then make sure that you can objectively see that in everybody that you meet. Business relationship, personal relationship, all of those things. Those are things that you need to pay attention to when you are making those kinds of decisions, especially here. Could be a life altering one.
Now, nephews, I need you to understand a standard. Okay. Your standard says this is what must consistently be present for me to continue investing. And make a list. You need to honesty, respect, compatible values, reciprocity, whatever your legitimate standards are. All right, but here's the important part. I want you guys to remember. Standards, they require behavior. If you repeatedly tolerate the opposite of what you claim to require, your behavior has exposed your real standard.
Yeah.
So
or lack thereof.
Stop telling me your standards. Nephews, show me your decisions. All right. Your decisions will tell me exactly what your standards are. Mm-hmm. And look, all right, let me ask you this. Chat, let me know. What are some of the things that you value? And I also would like to know what are some of the things that maybe your dating history proves that you tolerate? Okay. Now, there's probably some daylight in between those two. And you know what? That's where the work is, nephews. Now, I know you guys wanted to see some dating profiles tonight because on Thursday, we're usually breaking down women's dating profiles. And we'll get back to that. But, you know, this week we're going to talk about standards because your standards, they're important, okay? Especially if your standards are fake. And I want you to understand your standards, they're tested by desire, okay? Now, this is where your standards start developing mysterious expectations because you've been telling everybody things like, I don't tolerate inconsistency. And then a woman that you're mildly attracted to disappears for 4 days. You're gone. Okay. But your absolute physical type, suddenly you're conducting an investigation. Okay. Well, maybe she's busy. Maybe work has just been crazy for her, or maybe her phone broke. All right. Now
that's that ego shield.
Nephews, attraction, it doesn't change the information. It changes how badly you want the information to mean something else. And that's a major distinction. Now, Johnny, let's talk about the halo problem, shall we? Now, this is when we're highly attracted to somebody. There's a temptation to let one desirable trait spill into the traits like we haven't even established. All right. Beautiful.
Oh, dude, we see it every day just on the comments on a pretty girl's photo.
Yeah, right. Well, beautiful becomes interesting. It becomes kind, compatible. She's trustworthy. My favorite,
Yeah.
wifey material.
Oh God.
All right, we skipped about six
Meanwhile, all it was
interviews.
was a. Meanwhile, all it might have been is a short of 2 yoga poses.
Nephews, beauty proves she's beautiful. That's it. Enjoy it. Okay. Appreciate it. Be attracted. Just don't promote physical attraction into character evidence. Okay. Because, like I mentioned earlier, there's a tax. Okay. And here's a concept that I want each and every one of my nephews watching, catching this on the replay to understand. The more attracted you are, the more expensive bad judgment can become.
Oh God, yes. And listen,
And
we're talking to all you guys that get taken by those girls on the message and inmate site. I've been watching a lot of Love After Lockup. This shit's hilarious. That's for all the Captain Sabahos out there. That's for all those guys that think that you are the one that's going to be different because you care. And it goes even beyond that. But anyway, yeah. Sorry, Bill. Go ahead.
well, Johnny, I need these guys to understand it. It's because of that high attraction that it creates a certain motivation. Okay. What I'm talking about, nephews, is you're willing to drive further. You're willing to wait a little bit longer. You're willing to spend a little more bread, explain yourself a little more, forgive things a little bit faster, ignore things you clearly shouldn't be ignoring, and invest earlier. And none of those individually prove that you're making a bad decision, but they should tell you my objectivity may be compromised. So when attraction goes up, your vetting, it shouldn't go down. It should become more disciplined. Now, not
And here's the thing: a lot of young men have a problem with is that the more they enforce their own standards on what they're looking for and what they won't accept, it does mean that the girls that they are actually going to end up talking to end up being a little more scarce. So yes, it is going to mean less action for you, but it's also going to mean a lot less heartache because you are not allowing anyone in who doesn't fit that program that you have designed for yourself and your life.
Okay, nephews, vetting a beautiful woman, vetting a woman, a baddie you're highly attracted to. You need to be more patient. Okay, and look, the strongest man in the room isn't the man who feels nothing. Right? It's the man who can feel everything and still make a good decision. That's emotional control. Being attracted to a baddie, it's not a weakness. Right? Wanting her, it's not a weakness. Walking away while still wanting her, that's where we find out who you are. Anybody can leave somebody they don't want. Tell me about walking away from her when you're highly attracted to her.
Yeah, I mean that's putting your standards above above comfort and attraction. Yeah.
Okay.
That goes to show that you don't get a free pass to do whatever it is that you did that turned me away. Yeah.
Now, Johnny, what's another reason men tend to lower their standards?
Well, I mean, I think social and cultural pushback is part of it too. Holding the line does kind of generate labels like picky or entitled or misogynist sometimes or afraid of strong women. And, I think like peers, family, social media, they often frame male standards as like an obstacle rather than a reasonable filter. And I think a lot of guys, kind of feel pushed back that way because we are in a society right now saying you should be happy they like you. You know what I mean? And look, when we combine that with the fact that we know in our primal primate cells that let's face it, biologically a male can impregnate hundreds of females a year, but a female can only get pregnant theoretically once or twice in a calendar year. So of course they're supposed to be biologically more selective. Now let's take that beyond the however many 100,000 years that humans have walked the earth. And now we're bringing in social norms. We're bringing in social mores and values. And culture, pop culture, the media, that really does seem to spread a lot of that type of mentality. And, these young men are confused because they're being told that this is what girls feel attracted to on TV because it looks good. It looks great in literature. It looks great in a movie. It's great for a rom com. What did I tell you about following advice from rom coms, fellas? But when you try that stuff in the real world, if you're extremely lucky, you get friend zone because you came in as a friend. You came in because you thought you were, part of this. You thought that you were the protagonist in this romantic comedy that you've written in your head. And, unfortunately, it really doesn't work that way because person to person communication is a lot simpler than that. And number one, number two, it isn't written by a Hollywood producer or a Hollywood writer. So I think a lot of these guys do feel that, by putting in standards, all the things that the media has told them, it sounds bad. It hits the ear all wrong. Okay, but think about it. Who are you controlling? You are giving yourself two options: chase this person's approval or live life on my own terms and find someone who fits it. I promise you'll be happier with the latter.
Now, Johnny, let's talk about something else that makes men renegotiate their standards that I see all too often trying to help these young men on the internet. That's loneliness. Beauty isn't the only thing that compromises judgment, nephews. Loneliness does too. And this one, it deserves compassion because prolonged loneliness can change how opportunities feel. All right. When you've been alone long enough, attention can feel more valuable. A match with somebody online can feel more important. Even a mediocre connection can start feeling rare. All right. Now, like Johnny had mentioned earlier, scarcity. This is scarcity talking. What if this is my last opportunity? Dating is terrible out there, or hey, I'm getting older. So
those are all things that you can say are uncontrollables. I mean, all those things that we mentioned out there, like you just said, these are uncontrollables. And you know something? Those are the kinds of things that we deal with throughout our entire lives, no matter what stage we're at. You're 6 years old. You got to go to school. That's an uncontrollable. You make the best of it. That's the controllable part. And I know that sometimes it might be hard to see where that best could be made. But, like I said, the things you just mentioned, yeah, you're correct. Those are uncontrollables. But young men and men our age and men older than us, we tell you all the time, you control the controllables. And, we navigate around the uncontrollables. That's life. That's how we navigate. And it should be no different in interpersonal relationships than it is at work or at school or playing a freaking video game, bro. Anything.
Hey, shout out to Mini Mom. Always a pleasure to have you in the chat. Mini Mom, we're not doing dating profiles tonight. We're talking about standards with these young men. And really, I want to talk about healthy flexibility versus self-abandonment, Johnny, because
sure,
as men, our standards should evolve. Okay. If you're 42 years old and you're still rejecting somebody because she doesn't like the same bands you liked at 22, maybe you got some growing to do. That's not lowering your standard. That's maturity. All right. Maybe something you thought mattered doesn't. Fine. Update the standard. But here's the test. Did I change this because I learned something or because I'm afraid of losing this person?
Well, but one standard I will have is that if you like the band AJR or you like Steely Dan, I'm still going to say no thanks.
Now, nephews, that's the question. If reflection changed your mind, it's growth. If fear changed your mind, well, maybe we should investigate that. Maybe you should be calling up. Okay, because scarcity creates false values. Now, this is important. All right, something being scarce does not automatically make it valuable. All right, if you haven't had attention in months, attention feels rare. that doesn't make the person giving it compatible. Okay. If you haven't had any kind of adult fun in a year, an opportunity for that might feel enormous. That doesn't automatically make accepting it a good decision. Okay. If you've been lonely, companionship, it can even feel like medicine. But nephews, relief and compatibility are not the same thing. Because sometimes you're not choosing her, you're choosing relief from loneliness. And they can feel identical when you're in that moment, but nephews, they're not. All right. And look, nephews, I want you to ask, would I choose this person if I genuinely believed another opportunity was coming?
Bruh.
Not because another opportunity is guaranteed. I'm going to be honest with you, it isn't. But the question, it's going to expose scarcity thinking. Because if your answer becomes completely different when that fear is removed, fear was participating in the decision. And fear, it's a terrible dating coach.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, fear is always going to graduate into paranoia. It's going to graduate into behaviors, and it's going to graduate into the ick, and a reasonable ick at that regard. I mean, and that's middle of the table scenario.
Nephews, call up. We're going to be on another 20, 30 minutes. We'd love to hear your own questions, your own experiences. It don't even have to be about dating. Whatever you need. We're your favorite uncles for a reason. All right, now, moving on, nephews. Let's talk about the price of a standard. Okay, because now we're going to get to the deepest part of tonight. Because every meaningful standard, it eventually sends you an invoice. All right, and that's why nobody puts on Instagram. All right, everybody loves that stuff they keep saying, know your worth, Johnny, never settle, or maintain boundaries. Cool, beautiful. But what's the cost? All right, because sometimes maintaining your standard means losing somebody you genuinely care about.
Well, or I mean, it can even mean never meeting them in the first place because you are looking for something that is fitting to what you're looking to what you seek, something that checks your boxes, and that does mean that you're going to spend a little bit more time alone than the guy who says, "Oh, I'll take that one. Oh, she's looking at me too. Oh, she's interested. Yeah, let's take her on." I mean, these guys are the ones that are wasting all the time and money, and then wondering why they always do that to them, and you are the smart one with your standards because you're not meeting with somebody unless they are somewhere within that program that you have set up for yourself. So now, not only have you stopped wasting so much money on attractions that aren't there, you're not even wasting time on that hour of drinks or that second or third date because you are vetting these women before you decide to even bother to have that deep a conversation. That's what you should be doing. But it is going to seem like, oh, maybe I'm, preferencing myself into oblivion. No, you are giving yourself the option of being alone versus being with the wrong person. That's what you're doing. And I think that's worth your time.
So standards, let me tell you, it's difficult when there's somebody you genuinely care about and they have done something that you won't allow in your life and you have to walk away. It's not going to be easy. It's going to test you in ways you never imagined. Sometimes it can mean turning down adult fun. Sometimes it means walking away from somebody you had incredible chemistry with. Sometimes it means ending a relationship where nobody cheated, nobody is evil, but fundamentally you're just incompatible.
Yeah.
And look, I'm gonna be honest with you, nephew. Sometimes it means sitting home alone on a Friday night.
Absolutely. Shout out to Stacey Angel. She says boundaries are not negotiable. Standards can sometimes be unrealistic, but that's definitely a big difference. And yeah, I mean, I've known some guys that had some pretty unrealistic standards. And, I remember thinking to myself, my God, where's he think he's going to find somebody? But a couple of those guys with those ridiculous or what I thought was unrealistic standards ended up finding a woman who, really fit him well, and they're still together this very day. There's a few couples I can describe like that. And, it seemed to take him a while. It seemed to take him a lot of vetting and seemed to take him breaking up with a lot of girls where I was like, wow, did you break up with her? But look, he was looking for something specific, and, it took some time. It took some effort. It took a lot of vetting, but he got there. And, those are unfortunately becoming increasingly rare in our society now. But once again, once we can make it a little bit more universal and normalize having standards, we might be able to see this happen a little bit more often. But it's going to take the craziest thing is it's going to take a concerted individual effort. As weird as that's going to sound.
Now, nephews, standards without consequences, they're nothing but wishes. If your boundary,
Go without a plan.
if your boundary gets repeatedly violated and you don't change anything about it, then you don't have an enforced boundary. You have a request. That's uncomfortable. Okay, but it's important. You cannot keep announcing consequences that you're not willing to enforce, because eventually what's going to happen is you're going to stop trusting yourself. And that's bigger than dating. Okay. Every time you tell yourself, if this happens again, I'm leaving, and then it happens again and you stay, then something, it happens to you internally. All right. Your own word, it becomes cheaper. And that's why maintaining standards, they build self-respect. Because you're proving to yourself that your word means something. Go ahead, Johnny.
I tell you guys all the time, don't say that unless you really mean it. And I mean, don't even say it to yourself. Because you say it to yourself and you don't mean it. That little voice inside you that you're ignoring, it's sitting there telling you, man, no, you won't. No, you won't. And that's the biggest problem. I mean, if you do not back up your own consequences to those standards not being met, then those standards don't exist. Standards don't exist that you don't enforce. If you don't enforce them, they're not standards. They're suggestions. They're requests. That's you requesting someone else to make your life better. Make that make sense. That's up to nobody but you, man.
Nephews, I want to talk about walking away without punishment. I think it's important we talk about this tonight, because here's where I want us to separate from a lot of the internet dating content. All right. Walking away from somebody, it doesn't require anger. You don't need revenge. You don't got to teach them a lesson. You don't got to prove that they're wrong. Okay.
You don't have to key their car.
No, because she may be perfectly right for someone else, just wrong for you. And that's compatibility. Okay. Sometimes two decent people want completely different lives. Nobody needs to become the villain. That's a grown man game, nephews. I respect your choice, and it doesn't work for me. That's it. Done.
Which, believe it or not, you're allowed to say.
Now, I know some of you guys are going to say, never tolerate disrespect, cut her off immediately. So let me just tell you for a second, slow down, okay? Standards without judgment become rigid, okay? Context matters, patterns matter, accountability also matters, because people can make mistakes. Healthy relationships, they require forgiveness. The question, all right, the question isn't did she ever disappoint me? The question is, what happens after disappointment? Did she acknowledge it? Did she try to repair? Did she change her behavior? One bad Tuesday isn't necessarily a pattern. 17 bad Tuesdays probably deserve your attention. All right, we're building judgment here, not paranoia. So look, let me give you the test, nephews, the standards test. Okay. I need you to ask yourself, can I enforce this without needing the other person to agree with me? Now that's powerful because maybe she thinks you're being unreasonable. Okay. Maybe her friends agree with her. Okay. Maybe the internet agrees with her, Johnny.
She did get a
Okay.
lot of likes on her public posts about it.
A standard, nephews, does not require unanimous approval. It requires your willingness to accept the consequences of your decision. And that's adulthood. Now, let's talk. Johnny, let's talk for a minute
I gotta grab the charger for my sound card. Be right back, folks. My technician's got the night off.
Bruh.
Johnny, let's talk for a minute about what these young men should be tolerating. All right. So let's talk about this. Okay. What you say you value, and then what you repeatedly tolerate, and what you actually value. All right, nephews, your mouth, it can say anything. Right now, I'd be willing to bet, though, your dating history, it definitely has some receipts, though. All right, so I hear men say stuff like peace matters, but then repeatedly choose chaos. Things like reciprocity matters. All right, but repeatedly chase people who barely even participate. Now, eventually, you gotta stop interviewing your attentions and let's interview your behavior, shall we? Because this is where the truth lives. Now, I want you to understand, and Johnny, maybe you can help me out with this. And this is why we explain get to know yourself so well, because ultimately your standards are about you.
Yeah. I'll tell you, nothing. It's funny you should say know yourself, because nothing really teaches you a little bit more about what your standards should be, quite like a breakup of a long-term relationship, or in my case, a divorce. See, Uncle Bill probably remembers about 15 years ago when my ex-wife and I first split, and I went and got a tattoo across the back of my shoulders. It's a Latin phrase, and it goes "Nosce te ipsum." In Latin means "Know thyself." That was put on the back of my shoulders for a reason. It's a burden that we should all be able to carry on our shoulders, and it shouldn't really be a burden. It should be a virtue. Because when it is a virtue, you do know yourself. When you know yourself, you know what you are willing to accept out of life. And if you accept nothing less, then people could argue that you might find yourself alone. But I think the counter to that is rather be alone than unhappy.
Now, nephews, I'd like you to understand tonight that a lot of you think that standards are primarily filters for women. And Johnny and I are here to tell you that they're not.
I mean, they can be.
Your standards, they're also filters for versions of you. What I'm talking about is the desperate you, the lonely you, the horny you, the insecure you, that ego-driven you. Those men, they live inside of all of us. Right? You don't destroy them, you govern them, and that's leadership. And maybe that's the deepest definition of masculinity we're going to touch tonight. Before you can lead anybody else, can you lead yourself when your emotions are voting against you? Can you want her and still say no to her? Can you miss that woman and not go back? Can you be lonely and still refuse to use another human being as anesthesia? Can you be rejected without becoming bitter? Or
because if you can't answer yes to that, you'll never see past any gaslighting that may or may not come your way. And not just from her, from anybody.
Nephews, that's strength. Not chest beating, not controlling women, not pretending you don't have emotions. I'm talking self-governance. All right, nephews, call up. The lines are open, or Johnny and I are probably going to wrap this up here shortly if you don't have some questions for us about your own standards.
Yeah. I think that when we can get ourselves out of that basement, that cellar of that scarcity mindset, that whole "no one will ever choose me" thing, loneliness in that sense, those can be a really that can be costly if you don't do some sort of reflection, and that may or may not involve the help of a professional. We are not professionals, okay? I tell you this time and time again. We're not clinical psychiatrists. We're a couple of guys who've been through the ringer, but we know a little bit about the scarcity mindset, and that does make it very, very easy for young men to become cynical about what the dating world is actually like. Now we can sit there and say all we want about, oh, the wrong guys get the right girls. Who said they were the wrong guys? Who said they were the right girls? That does tend to be an outer projection of the inward feeling of insignificance. And if that is what's happening in your life, guys, we've got to really kind of revamp the way we think. We got to revamp the way we live. I would be willing to bet that most of those guys who feel that way probably don't have a solid routine for their morning, for example. They're probably not making their bed when they get up. They're probably not making sure they catch that breakfast before they hit that workout. They're probably not making sure they're doing the Johnny Dumbbell Challenge, which, by the way, is 3 times a week for 4 weeks and then 4 days a week for 4 more weeks. I'd like to hear that you guys are doing that. Anyway, I think a lot's going to
Shout out to the Johnny Dumbbell Challenge, and shout out to everybody who's completed it.
Yeah, there have been a few. And, by the way, shout out to Arthur. He's on his 3rd day. And remember, we talked to him on last Sunday. And let's see, we've got Enzo is also on day 3. So, hey, let's go, guys. Let's get it going.
Now, Johnny, you mentioned we want to teach these young men how to step out of a scarcity mindset. So, nephews, first thing I need you to do is stop trying to convince yourself there are plenty of women out there. Okay, maybe there are. Okay. Maybe there aren't plenty of compatible women available to you right now. That's not the important question. The important question is, does having fewer options make this option better? No. Okay, that's where the scarcity starts to screw with your judgment. All right. Let's say you haven't had a date in 6 months, and then somebody shows interest, but she's inconsistent. You got to do all the initiating. You don't particularly like how she even communicates. Let's say she takes a few days to get back to you, or it's real short. It's like the company line. Shout out to Johnny Dumbbell. You already see the incompatibilities, but your brain says, yeah, but what if I don't meet anyone else? I want you to notice what just happened. All right. You stopped evaluating her and started evaluating the fear of being alone.
Yeah.
And these are two different decisions. Okay. So the first thing I need you to do is separate rarity from value. Because the thing about scarcity is it makes rare things feel valuable, but rare and valuable, they're not synonyms. If you have been starving, a gas station sandwich, it starts looking like Thanksgiving dinner. That doesn't mean Gordon Ramsay made it. Attention works the same way. If you've received very little attention lately, and then somebody's interesting, they can feel extraordinarily valuable. All right, so you ask, all right, if I had 3 healthy options in front of me, would I still choose this one? Because you don't need 3 options. It's a thought experiment. All right, you're removing fear from the evaluation. If your standards completely change when you imagine abundance, scarcity's been negotiating for you. Next thing, nephews, we're always telling you, build a life that doesn't need dating to rescue it. Build a kingdom she wants to be a part of. All right, now this is the bigger game. Because some men, they don't actually need more women. All right, they need more life. They need more friends. They need more purpose. Shout out to Johnny Dumbbell and the Johnny Dumbbell Challenge. They need more fitness.
Absolutely. Yeah. More than that, a routine, something that you have as part of your daily life and your schedule. This is the first step to designing your own program. Yeah.
Johnny, they need a community and they need brotherhood. That's what they all do.
Yep.
Something meaningful waiting for them on Thursday nights. Hey. Because look, when romance is your only source of excitement, connection, and validation, every woman is going to carry way too much weight for you. Now, losing her, it doesn't mean losing her. All right. All right. Hold on. Let me slow down a second. Okay. You need to stop over investing in early attention. All right. And a match isn't scarce. All right. I match with women all the time. Phone numbers, they're not scarce. I give out my number all the time. A first date isn't scarce, nephew. I've been on more of them than I can count. Those are opportunities to gather information. Men create artificial scarcity when they emotionally promote somebody too quickly. Right, yeah. One good date, I really don't want to screw this up. Nephews, you don't even know what this is yet. So this is why we tell you, match with these women, have a conversation, set up the date, go on your date, observe, look for consistencies, and increased investment. Shout out to Johnny Dumbbell again. Bottom line are actions. Let the investment trail information. Okay. Now, losing an early connection doesn't feel like you're losing your future wife. You lost Tuesday's coffee date. You'll survive this national emergency, I'm sure.
You might just pull through, yeah.
Now, here's something that you're going to have to do, and this is the hard part. And I'm speaking from experience here. You have to become willing to experience loneliness, okay? Now, look, I know this one, it isn't sexy, and it's probably the most important, though. All right, just bear with me here for a second. You can't maintain standards if you're unwilling to experience the discomfort those standards sometimes create. Sometimes the correct decision means going home alone. Sometimes there's nobody waiting in your DMs. Sometimes you swipe left and you don't, the next one that pops up isn't a swipe right. Okay, that's the price of this. The goal isn't to never feel lonely. The goal is to stop allowing loneliness to make decisions for you. That's emotional security.
Or scarcity of any kind, yeah.
I'd rather temporarily experience loneliness than permanently negotiate against myself, Johnny.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, and that's, I think that young men do that because they maybe even entertain that scarcity mindset in other aspects of their lives. We touched on this earlier, but standards are not just romantic. Young men, you should be refusing low quality friendships, dead end jobs. You should be refusing aimless habits, things that really don't lead anywhere. You might in the meantime, you might experience some sort of scarcity, some sort of short-term, loneliness of some kind. But that is because you are vetting the people that were normally all up in your ear and that were in your atmosphere all the time. You've eliminated them. Now that might seem kind of sad, that might seem kind of lonely, but remember, this is an opportunity. You are going to build from that point on. You're going to see people who lowered their standards in order to not sacrifice their connections. And especially when that connection is romantic, but even if it's, the dead end job, you're going to see how those people are going to feel. You're going to see how much later in the morning they wake up while still being able to make it on time. In the morning, I wake up 2.5 hours before I have to be at work. It takes me 15 minutes to get there by bike. But I like being up because I enjoy being awake and getting ready to do something I love. There are people in dead-end jobs, they're getting up 45 minutes before they got to be there, and it's a 30-minute drive. That was me 20 years ago when I worked at a certain call center that I met Uncle Bill at. Hated that place. All right?
Bruh.
Yeah, look, it was terrible. But, I mean, the thing of it is that you're going to be able to tell the difference between somebody who loves waking up in the morning and somebody who goes, "Oh, great, my eyes opened again." And I think a lot of the time when you see the latter, those are people who lower their standards for comfort, for the ability to currently have and hold a job. And look, if you got to do what you got to do job wise, I understand. But if you have a goal in life, if you have a career in life, you have a career in mind, something you want to be, take those steps towards doing it. Because when you lower your standards just to accept a standard of living that is passable, then passable is all you're going to get. I tell people all the time, if you do what you've always done, you get what you've always got. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And it's going to start with standards and sticking with
So,
them.
Nephews, we need you to create abundance outside of women. Now, this is where, okay, I know you guys are going to say, well, a man needs options. Okay, cool. But don't make women your only definition of options. Okay. Give yourself options in life. Become socially capable. Build friendships. All right. And like we were talking earlier, improve your health. Develop competence.
That's a big one.
Like Johnny was just saying, increase your income. Or TK, when we had TK on the panel, he'd talk about traveling and doing things by yourself, traveling alone. You need to learn things. You need to meet people without evaluating every woman as a romantic prospect. Become comfortable talking to strangers. Nephew, become comfortable being uncomfortable.
That's it.
Now your internal message, it changes from, I hope she chooses me, to let's find out whether we're right for each other. That's abundance. Not having 37 women in your phone, not needing this particular outcome to validate you. Scarcity mindset, it doesn't disappear when you have unlimited choices. It disappears when you trust yourself, even when your choices are limited. And that's why it connects to this episode tonight, Johnny. If your standards only survive when another woman is waiting, that's not much of a standard. The real test is, can you walk away from the wrong opportunity without knowing when the right opportunity is going to come? That's faith in yourself.
Yeah, in a nutshell, it's realizing there are worse things than being alone.
That's discipline.
Yep.
Johnny, Nephews, call up or we're about to wrap this up tonight. We have a few other things to do. Johnny, you got some.
Yeah, Uncle Bill and I both got to be up early, folks. Major Blaze, good to see you.
Major Blaze, always appreciate you stopping by, sir. Hey, and all those watching me on TikTok tonight, I appreciate the love.
Major Blaze, that ex be stalking you, brother. Man, hey, look. This is this is what happens when she feels she fumbled, brother.
Hey, hold on. I'm getting comments on TikTok, Johnny. Mandy on Mass says, I'm being tested in this area right now. If you want to talk about it, our phone lines are open.
Yeah, seriously.
It's 330-269-5142. Call up with me and Uncle Johnny. We're live on YouTube. I turn on my TikTok because TikTok shows me more love than YouTube lately, man. And just thank you to all my new followers, everybody that's been rocking with me on TikTok over the last few months. I really appreciate all the love, the likes, the comments, the support you show me.
And by the way, speaking of which, if you guys are enjoying this, make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps our algorithm, and it helps us to be able to get out to more people and get the message out there.
Mandy says, can I walk away from the wrong option without knowing when the right one is going to come?
Yes.
Well, you absolutely
the right option is getting out of a bad situation. So absolutely.
So if you'd like to elaborate a little more, Mandy, please call up. You want me? You want to talk a little bit about that? How to walk away from the wrong situation, not knowing the right one's coming?
It's simple. I mean, choosing, a positive path for your own life rather than sacrificing your happiness for whatever it is that's making you want to walk away in the first place. I really think that a lot of us really try to force this because we don't want to be the one that gave up something and I think some of us have this really huge fear. If we let this person go, they're going to go on and be this great, light of somebody else's life. And even if that does happen, dude, they weren't the light of yours. And
I
if they're dimming your own shine, yeah, man, get away from it and be alone rather than be in the wrong situation.
Yeah, thank you for the follow, man. You could tap in with us next time. Nephews, look, before we get out of here tonight, I want to leave you with this. Everybody wants standards until that invoice shows up. It's easy to talk about what you won't tolerate when you're not attracted to her. It's easy when you're not lonely. It's easy when you haven't invested anything. But eventually, you're going to meet somebody you want. And reality is going to show you something that you don't want to see. That's the moment. Not when you're sitting here watching us, not when you're giving advice to your boy. It's you. It's when she's beautiful, when the chemistry is there, when you miss her. All right, when walking away hurts more than staying. I mean, at least tonight. All right, that's when we find out what your standards are worth. And remember what we talked about here tonight, nephews. Your standards aren't instructions for women. You don't need to
No,
control her or punish her. You don't need to convince
it's
her you're
impossible anyway.
right. She gets to choose the life she wants, and so do you.
Yep.
Sometimes the strongest thing you can say isn't you need to change. It's I understand, but that's not for me. So blessings on your journey. And then have enough discipline to actually mean it. Because
Yeah, don't
there's
pull that
something
out unless you
bigger,
plan to use it.
nephew. There's something bigger at stake here than getting the girl. Can you trust yourself? All right. When you tell yourself that something matters to you, does it still matter when honoring it hurts? When nobody's watching? When breaking your own rule would feel really damn good? Because that's self-respect, and nephews, that's leadership, because you can't govern yourself when you're lonely, emotional, attracted, angry, or afraid. You're not ready to lead anybody else. So don't leave here tonight with another list of things that women need to do. Leave here asking the harder question about you. What do you actually value? What do you repeatedly tolerate? And where have I been calling something a standard when it's really just a preference? What am I willing to lose to remain the man that I say I am? Because that's the work. And look, I just want to say to everybody who joined us live tonight, thank you. Seriously, you could have spent this hour anywhere. You chose to spend it with your favorite uncles. Everybody in the chat, thank you. Everybody that liked the stream, that followed us, everybody writing into Johnny asking questions on Monday night, and really
Still need two
everybody
more.
who disagrees respectfully with us. Everybody sitting quietly somewhere thinking, damn, I needed to hear that. We appreciate you. And if you're watching this on the replay, you're part of the conversation too. Okay. Take what serves you, think about it, and apply it. And then come back next week a little sharper than you were this week. Because we're not here to blame women. We're here to build better men, better judgment, better discipline, better leaders, better fathers, better husbands, better decision makers. Because I want every nephew watching this to have an opportunity to become the greatest man his bloodline has ever seen. And that man isn't built by what he says he believes. He's built by the decisions he makes when those beliefs become expensive. Remember, your standards aren't proven by what you reject. They're proven by what you're willing to lose. Nephews, protect your peace, protect your purpose. Now go forth and conquer, and we'll see you Monday night. Johnny, you got anything to add before we wrap this up?
Once again, famous phrase around here in Pittsburgh, the standard is the standard. And I have nothing against you walking around saying that, but if you're going to say it, you better live it. Don't talk about it, be about it. That's what a standard actually is. It's not, well, I'd really like if you, it's no, I only commit to situations in which this happens. Now, what I would like for you to commit to between now and the time we see you Monday night is keeping yourself safe. Now, we realize that we've got, 3.5, 4 days for that for y'all to get in trouble. So keep the drugs and alcohol and the mischief to a very minimum. But if you do drink, don't drive. And if you do drive, don't park. Because as we know, accidents cause people. We don't want that for you. We'll see you Monday night.